Sandra Ezekwesili on 99.3 Nigeria Info. It's time for the big hard fact. From now until 6 p.m., we're going to be diving deep into one big issue in Nigeria today. And we're looking at the controversy surrounding Operation Positive Identification and whether or not the army will be extending the operation beyond the northeast and into the rest of Nigeria. Now, here's today's big hard fact. According to a September 25th press statement by the Army Headquarters official social media handles on Twitter and Facebook, Operation Positive Identification would be extended to 19 states outside of the Northeast and would run from October 7th to December 24th. Those are the facts. That information is still on the Army's Facebook page for all to see. It's a public post, so you don't even have to be signed into Facebook to see it. The Army told us categorically that it will be extending Operation Positive Identification to these 19 states. Now, I'm taking the time to point this out because we've had a lot of speculation and a lot of rumors, right? And a lot of allegations surrounding Operation Positive Identification. But this is hard facts. It's not hard speculations. We even had the spokesperson of the Army, Colonel Sagia Musa, come out to say that the information about Operation Public Information was, quote, a fake alert, unquote. But here's the real alert. On the Army's official social media pages, and guess who it was signed by? Colonel Sagia Musa. Let me, in fact, quote a portion of the press statement for you. It says, quote, similarly, Operation Positive Identification will also be extended across the nation to checkmate bandits, kidnappers, armed robbers, ethnic militias, cattle rustlers, as well as other sundry crimes across the various regions of Nigeria, end of quote. So it's quite interesting to hear this same Army spokesperson calling the OPI news fake news or fake alerts. Now, the House of Representatives summoned the Army last week to discuss this matter, and the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tuko Buratai, told the House of Reps through a representative that the Army was planning on extending the operation to some parts of the country beyond the Northeast, but that this would only be in places with ongoing military operation, like Crocodile Smile in the South-South, and Ayamakbatuma in the North Central, and Atilogwodo in the Southeast. So this is precisely the same thing that the September 25th press release said. Now, part of what I want to discuss today is why we appear to be getting mixed messages from the Army about this, especially when the Chief of Army Staff has testified to the National Assembly that there is indeed a plan to extend OPI. Beyond that, I also want to discuss the nature of Operation Positive Identification. Femi Falana has brought a lawsuit challenging its constitutionality. And we'll look at the arguments in that lawsuit as well. I'm not alone on the show. My first guest is Dr. Charles Omole. He's a national security expert. He's the Director General of the Institute for Police and Security Policy Research. Hello, sir. Thank you so much for joining me on Hard Facts.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, we have on the phone with us Janice Amakri, who is a security expert and a former Assistant Director of the State Security Service. Thank you so much, sir, for your time again.
Thank you, Sandra.
And also on the phone with me is a lawyer, Barrister Eze Eluchie. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Hello, sir. We're going to have to call him back. We've called him again on that line. That isn't working very great. And you, our listener, of course, is our fourth guest. And throughout the show, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts about the Army's plan for Operation Positive Identification? What do you think about the Army's growing role in crime fighting? Now, before we get into the legality and the different statements, I have a question about effectiveness, Dr. Omole. According to INEC, there are 72.8 million collected PVCs. According to the National Identity Management Commission, there are only 37 million Nigerians registered in their database with NINs, National Identification Numbers. There's no way that up to 30% of Nigerians have either an international passport or a driver's license. So and these are the only 4 forms of ID in the country, the only kinds that the Army has stated in their press statements. How can Operation Positive Identification be effective when most Nigerians do not have positive ID?
That's a very good question. I mean, I don't see, I think the Army is just posturing in this regard. I don't feel that it's the job of the Army to be doing this, but we probably will come to that. There is a tough war between the Army and the police.
I see.
And I'm saying the Army, not the military as a whole,
okay,
but the Army in particular,
okay,
and the police. And that tough war is right from the top to the bottom, in terms of the leadership to the rank and file.
I see.
When was it? Just last week in Osun State, there was a report of a Army chap stabbing somebody. And then police was called, and the police arrested the Army chap. Within a few hours, about 20 or so Army personnel invaded the police station and released their colleague. And that's the nature of the game. That's the nature that, there's this superiority complex that I think exists between the Army and the police. And, it's bad. It's pretty bad. The challenge here is both the Army and the police are responsible, feedback to the president. So clearly, he's the only one that can call them to order here. But it's a big problem.
Let me come to you, Mr. Makri. Why do you think this is happening? Why does it look like the Army spokesman is contradicting himself?
I think we have a situation where even the National Assembly has waded into the matter. And at the National Assembly, they told them that, you can see that the positive identification operation is almost changing into, like what the Chief of Army Staff said, they have an ongoing Operation Crocodile Smile and all the rest of Atilogu, Udo and all the rest. Mm-hmm. So either they are trying to put the Operation Positive ID into those operations, or they are, try to cancel it, just like Sergei have said that it was fake news. And these days we don't even know which one is fake or which one is real. But I think by reading the body language of both agencies, you can see which one is fake or true.
But can it be fake news? Can it be fake news, Mr. Makri, when the statement is still on the social media handles, the official social media handles of the Army?
Oh yeah, fake news they can fake even the handle. You can see that just with a different letter in the handle and everything.
No,
changes.
I checked. This is the official one.
Mm-hmm.
I checked, and this is the official
one.
Yes.
That's what I earlier said. It might be an afterthought whereby they've written that, and then of course they will now change it to another statement, calling the previous one a fake one. Because these days I'm just very worried because the Nigerian public is not being told exactly what is going on. We have all kinds of things going on, and the infringement, just like your guest in the studio have just said, the infringement, it's not even a tough war. It is an infringement by the Army into the police stuff, whereby they want to get involved in internal security. And they are supposed to get involved only when invited. And the police is saying, we have not invited you yet, but you are busy coming in there. And the Army feels that. I think it's a throwback of the military era when the military thinks that they're in charge. And I think that mentality has not gone away since then, where they feel that this superiority complex of they are most, even the military, the Army feels that they are more superior than other arms of the military.
I see. Let me come to Barrister Luchie. Femi Falana has taken the army to court over OPI. He says the army doesn't have the constitutional right to be demanding that Nigerians show them identification. He's basing his case on Section 217 of the Constitution. Does he have legal grounds to challenge the army here? Is it possible that they are overstepping their powers, Barrister Luchie?
Yes, certainly. The reality is that the army is better equipped and they are trained and their functions are restricted towards safeguarding the territorial integrity of the country.
Okay.
That is the border states, international issues, and they only come in for interstate matters when they are invited by the chief security officers of the respective states, who in this case is the governors of those states,
okay,
or maybe the State House Assembly, if there are any matters, or when the country is in a state of war, so properly declared. And to the best of our knowledge, and the National Assembly can attest to this, there has been no declaration of any state of war in any part of Nigeria.
Okay.
Nigeria is not engaged in any war with any country, so as we know. And no state chief executive has invited the Nigerian army to come and intervene into any security situation. Mm-hmm. So the reality is that the army coming in to start demanding ID cards of citizens is unconstitutional. And it's actually, I don't know, you wonder what's behind even the whole idea. The army is required and they are needed in the northeast to tackle the terrorists. They are required more in the northwest to address the banditry going on there. And suddenly they now want to dabble into where they are least qualified. And then when I mean least qualified, I say that with all seriousness. Mm. The army personnel who will be on the street, we know their level of awareness. Let me not use education. Mm. And from interaction of the Nigerian populace with the army, a lot of casualties have occurred. Now, these are the personnel you will expect to demand ID cards. Mm-hmm. Do they know what these ID cards are? Do they know which ones are the fake? Are they properly trained to understand what is a fake ID card or the genuine ID card? Or is it that they are just being placed on the street to make life difficult for others? And you're putting them on the street when there has been not enough sensitization. There has been not enough public enlightenment of what these soldiers are going to the streets to do. Mm. So without any doubt, there are bound to be casualties. People will be killed if these soldiers go on the street in the way they are being purported to go. People will be harmed. Is that the intent behind deploying the soldiers to check for ID cards? You wonder what's really behind all this stuff. And this is coming at a situation at a time when Mr. President is traveling around the world inviting foreign investors. Only a sick investor will come into a country where soldiers are checking IDs on the street. Armed soldiers who have... Yes, so it's unfortunate.
Let me come to Dr. Omole, because you're also a lawyer, and I have to look at that Section 217 of the Constitution with you. Now, according to Section 217 of the Constitution, subsection 2, the armed forces are empowered and staffed and equipped to do 4 things. And I quote, A, defending Nigeria from external aggression, just like Barrister Eluche has said. B, maintaining its territorial integrity and securing its borders from violation on land, sea, or air. C, suppressing insurrection and acting in aid of civil authorities to restore order when called upon to do so by the president, but subject to such conditions as may be prescribed by an act of the National Assembly. And D, performance such other functions as may be prescribed by an act of the National Assembly. So the army has clear powers to act unilaterally when it comes to defending our borders or fighting an external enemy or an internal insurrection. The only time the army can be used for law and order is if the president orders it and the National Assembly approves of that order. Does Operation Positive Identification pass that test?
Definitely not. I mean, the problem here with the harming here is the fact that, I mean, I have a problem with the substance of the so-called OPI,
Okay.
And also with the optics of it. So let's start with the optics of it.
Okay.
You know, we are in a democratic system. Even if the military was going to be deployed in aid of civil authority, in better climes around the world, it's not the military that announce it. I mean, if there is a disaster somewhere in the U.S., it's the White House that announced we are deploying the National Guard, not the head of the National Guard or the head of American military going on radio or TV saying, I'm deploying my men. So the optics of it should be, even if the army are going to be needed for any support role, it should be announced by the civilian authorities to say, okay, president bring out a statement, we are deploying the army to do this. The way the chief of army staff goes about announcing things all over the place, you will wonder who is the president. So for me, the optics of it look bad for the army to be the one making these announcements in the first place. Then, of course, in terms of the substance of it, in terms of whether they are in. I mean, from sources I know very well. Even when the police calls the army officially to aid them, the army hate being commanded by police officers. So even when they've called the army officially, that's why I'm using. I think the right is, I say tough war, but really the tough is actually belongs to the police.
The
really,
police to begin with.
To begin with. So the problem here is we have, a army chief that I think has outlived his usefulness, in my opinion. I believe that the guy should have long gone. Is officially should have retired 4 years ago, and the president keep extending it. And from sources within the army, the challenge he has now is almost like a little emperor in the army now, because all his cosmates are long retired.
Okay.
So all the subordinates under him are 2-3 courses below him.
I see.
So when he shows up, there's so much gap between him and the next layer.
I see.
That, very few people exist to speak truth to power within the leadership of the army. So he just gets away with it. And I think the president, whether directly or indirectly, acquiesced to such misbehavior.
I see. I have to come to you, Dennis Amakri, over here and ask the same question that I've asked Dr. Omole as well. Do you agree that Operation Positive Identification doesn't pass the test that has been set by the Nigerian Constitution?
It doesn't pass the test at all. See, there is a fundamental issue there, and I want to explain it.
Okay.
What the police people do is law enforcement. And what the army does is territorial fighting for territorial integrity, or generally put under the subject of security. Now, these are two different things altogether.
I see.
A policeman will usually arrest a suspect and then take him, prosecute him in court before a judge, and the judge is going to pass a sentence or free him if he's not guilty of the offense that he was brought before the judge. But a soldier is not trained to do that. He does not know the law. He does not know the laws of evidence. He does not know the laws of prosecution. His own is, this is a suspect, shoot him, kill him. And that, stops the victim from exercising his freedom of or his rights in society. So there is no way that you will have the soldiers, being involved in law enforcement. And I think positive identification is a law enforcement issue, whereby you are trying to go through the society and then you're finding out who is a Nigerian or who is not a Nigerian. You know, yesterday I saw the report that they've caught some people in Lagos who are Boko Haram leaders. I think that is just a ruse, trying to use that to confuse maybe the people that, oh, our president is very, very much needed in society, right? Even when the army is in society or among the public, they are not supposed to even walk alone. They are supposed to work in tandem with the police. And of course, when they invite them to come, the most senior police officer is the commander, because you are there as support, what we call support. You are not there to take over. You know, so we have a very serious issue here. And this thing is happening that, you know, and the commander-in-chief himself has not said anything about it. When this same thing happened earlier, you find out that the presidency is supposed to come out and then clear the air, and then of course do what it's supposed to do. But there is a silence of the grave over there, and nobody is saying anything. And then of course the army is busy going ahead and making press statements. In fact, that's another thing. I think one of your guests said it. There is never a country where you see, except it's a military government, where the military is making press statements. It happened during the election period, where the River State governor was accusing the military of intervening in the electoral process. And then, of course, they came up with their own press statement denying that they killed anybody and all kinds of things. The military is not supposed to be heard. You know, you never hear, even in the United States that we are copying, where you hear the chief of army staff or even the chief of defense, the chief of the joint chiefs coming out to make a press statement. You will never hear it. What you will hear is from defense headquarters or the presidency itself.
Or the National Security Advisor.
Yeah, we have even majors and captains making press statements and, you know, talking, and it is kind of reducing us to a lawless situation.
Barrister Luce,
and I think that has to be arrested.
That has to be arrested. Let me come to Barrister Luce. Some analysts have suggested that the OPI is just an addition to each of the operations that are already going on in different regions. That's what some people would argue, right? So Crocodile Smile in the South, for example, Atilogwood in the Southeast. And in that case, would the army still need special permission from the National Assembly to add an identification program to their operations? This is, of course, riding off of the back that some people are suggesting that the fact that the NAS is summoning the army to explain the OPI extension shows that the NAS has never been officially informed of it. If they were never informed, they could have never given consent. But did they need to give consent considering that other security operations and campaigns are already ongoing in these different parts of the country? Barrister Luce.
Yes, the reality is that even the so-called ongoing security operations are basically illegal. The crocodiles, yes, Tilogo, all those scam names they parade as deployment of soldiers within the Nigerian territory without National Assembly approval or the invitation of the civil authorities. So they are basically illegal. So what we are saying is just an extension of illegality. And when you are extending legality, it does not give it any cover of legal. It doesn't give it a legal flavor. And when you even look at what the army is supposed to do with this OPI, they are supposed to check the identification of Nigerians. You now ask yourself, how many Nigerians even have this ID card? We have people who have applied for national ID card for the past 5 years and they've not gotten it. How many Nigerians have voters cards out of a population of supposedly 200 million? We have less than 100 million with voters cards. How many Nigerians have international passports? Because these are the IDs that will show you are a Nigerian. So you now realize that you are throwing these soldiers to go and harass intimidate, and injure Nigerians. And there are times you can't fathom the sense behind some of these ideas. How did they contemplate it? What was the reasoning, the rationale behind setting up this, putting soldiers on the street, letting them loose to tackle and harass Nigerians? And then, like one of the members of this panel has now said, the president has kept silent. It's very worrisome because I cannot but foresee harm, violence, and death for Nigerians. Just mark it. We will soon begin to hear this in an altercation. A soldier shot 3 people because of ID cards. And like you said, the route of this thing will be more pronounced. We know where they'll be more pronounced, where there'll be more killings, there'll be more altercation. That is in the south region and in the southeast region. That is where the military will try to show power against civilians. They should go to Boko Haram land territory and then where the bandits are in the northeast and the northwest and prove their strength and not come to civilians and try to stop and harass unarmed people.
I have to come to Dr. Omole now. All the army statements agree on one point, sir. They say that Operation Positive Identification began in the northeast to catch escaping terrorists and insurgents. How exactly does the operation work in the northeast? Do you know?
Well, I mean, the problem here is I actually don't believe the initial operation, like I think somebody has alluded to, is actually a operation that should have been started in the first place. You see, when you are fighting insurgency, you are fighting people who are not wearing uniform. They are not conventional. They are not conventional army in that sense. So really, the best practice is that the army will do what it does, but then the police are needed to keep the peace where insurgents have been cleared. So really, any of these operations should never have been a army-only operation in the first place. So saying they're trying to extend it, I don't get it. I mean, the logic of the Operation Positive ID is not so much that I can show a document that shows I'm a Nigerian. In this day of Uluwole and all this, anybody can create any document. The only way that can work is if you have a way of authenticating that document live. So if I produce a passport to say I'm a Nigerian, you can enter that number into a system you have, and that confirms that that is a valid passport and I'm a Nigerian. Without that, anybody can produce a passport, and that doesn't mean they're Nigerian. So really, what operations like this does is that it harasses civilians, and the real criminals can get the document. The real insurgents can create fake documents to satisfy these requirements. It's the real innocent Nigerians that will actually, bear the brunt of this, and that is the sad part of this.
Okay, well, if you just joined the show, welcome. You're listening to Hard Facts, 99.3 Nigeria Info is the station. I have on the show with me today Barrister Eze Luche, who's a lawyer. I have as well a security expert and former assistant director of the State Security Service, Dennis Amakri. And I have the Director General of the Institute for Police and Security Policy Research, and he is also a national security expert, Dr. Charles Omole, on the show with me, and we're having conversations about the Army's controversial Operation Positive Identification and whether or not the Army will be extending Operation Positive Identification beyond the Northeast. Now, we have to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have other questions, and you can also call into the show and share your thoughts. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. Don't go away.
Hard Facts will be right back. Welcome back to Hard Facts.
Lagos, we're back. Good evening. I am Sandra Ezekwesili. On the show with me today, Dennis Samakri, who is a security expert, former State Security Service. We also have a lawyer on the show, Barrister Eze Eluchie, as well as a national security expert, who's also the Director General of the Institute for Police and Security Policy Research, Dr. Charles Omole. And today we are looking at Operation Positive Identification. Now, according to a September 25th press statement by the Army Headquarters official social media handles, I'm talking Twitter and Facebook, Operation Positive Identification will be extended to 19 states outside of the Northeast, and it will run from October 7th to December 24th. Those are the facts. That information is still on the Army's Facebook page for everybody to see it. It's a public post, so you don't even need to be signed into Facebook to see it. The Army told us categorically that it will be extending Operation Positive Identification to these 19 states. When we started, I took the time to point this out because we have a lot of speculation and a lot of rumors and a lot of allegations surrounding Operation Positive Identification. But this is hard facts, like I said. We even had the spokesman of the Army, Colonel Sagir Musa, come out to say that the information about Operation Positive Identification was fake a lot. And we have that information on the Army's official social media pages. And guess who signed it? Colonel Sagir Musa. And I shared a portion of that press statement with you when we started. And I told you some of the contents of it. Now, we've determined that the Constitution doesn't support this. We've determined, my guests and I, that the Operation Positive Identification doesn't pass the test of defending our borders by the Army, fighting an external enemy, or internal insurrection. The National Assembly did not approve of this operation. So I have to ask, what then is the motive? And I'm going to come to you, Dr. Omole. Why is the Army doing this? This, all the experts have said, is the job of the police. The Constitution doesn't support this operation. Why then do you think the Army is doing this?
Well, as you say, that there have been several rumors and third-party information as to why the Army is doing this. And sometime when all the logical reasons are no longer in existence or applicable, you will have to you have to take hold of one of those. And one of the rumors is that this could actually be driven by money. That the Army use these operations to, secure funds from governors and from government to justify operations. I've been told from sources allegedly that it's not uncommon for the Army to go to governors and say, look, these police are useless. We can do a better job. And the governor is, okay, here is whatever amount of money, go do your thing. And the Army, therefore, are gradually turning themselves into police force, all because of money. Because if you take money out, then you ask yourself, there's no other motive left. That's my point. It's not been instructed by the president. We are not hearing any statement to either affirm or,
deny.
Or deny.
National Assembly did not approve.
Exactly.
No governors have requested this.
The police have not, asked for Army to come in to help them. So you have to ask yourself, why would the Army take it upon itself to take on civil policing duties? If there is, nothing else behind it. So from my sources, I believe it's the good old greed that's probably leading this.
Good old greed, Dr. Omole says. Barrister Eluchie, is this something you agree with?
Well, like the doctor just said, it was just speculation. But I think it's unthinkable. There is no rationale behind it. And I think what it only exposes is the fact that the billions of nairas wasted on training the military to remember or to realize that under a democratic dispensation, they are subject to civilian authority has been wasted. Because thus far, it's like we're having an army-run riot, doing what it feels it should do, because the entire civilian structure, the National Assembly, the state governors, even the executive branch seems not to be aware or in control of what the military is doing. So what the military is risking, if it continues on this, is that civil society organization will be forced to petition the international community that we have a military that has gone a war, that has gone a war, and if it means sanctioning the military, because that is what it's coming to. Because eventually we will have casualties, and these casualties, I don't know if it is you or me, but it's going to be some Nigerians who will be casualties. So if we petition the international community, that those who have been funding the military, who have been paying for this training, to subjugate the military to civilian authority, and let them understand that these trainings are not working. So that this military needs to be reined in. We cannot just, on the basis that the Chief of Army Staff has overstayed, allow the army to run riots on the Constitution. But it is not justifiable. There is no rationale. There is no justifiable reason for why they should continue on this path. I will not descend into the realm of rumors, but I just believe that the military must be called to order.
I see. Mr. Macri, I have to ask you about the mechanism. I want to talk about that. The mechanism of this Operation Positive Identification, how is it meant to work? Does the army, for instance, have a database of terrorists that it will be checking names against?
I don't think so, because I try to survey on that too. And I know very well that the DSS supplies intelligence to both the police and the military. And of course, we know for sure that there are some insurgents that have run into the country. I know also that some were arrested even some years back in Lagos. And all these were because of intelligence supplied by the DSS, And if that is the case, the police has worked with the SSS in Lagos to arrest them.
Okay.
You know, a lot of them were arrested when they were trying to blow up the Third Mainland Bridge. And then they were taken down and they confessed. And that was when things were very, very hot for them in the Northeast. Now, under that kind of situation, you don't need the military to be there to start identifying people. Because, like we said, even an SCDC, Nigerian Civil Defense Corps can do that. You don't have to get people with guns, AR-15s, to come around and pointing at civilians and then trying to find out who they are. This same question was put to the Chief of Army Staff, and he said, oh, yes, we are working with the other services, the other security agents to do it, and it has been successful in the Northeast, and then we are trying to extend it into the country. I think these are all excuses. These are all excuses because like one of the guests said earlier, the money motive is very, very high. Very, very high. And I think that is what is happening. And in a situation where nobody is under having the ability under control, or the army under control, then we have a problem. Because, you know, we've had situation where 400 million naira has been arrested or taken away, stolen by some soldiers who were trying to deliver it from somewhere. Now, there is nowhere, even in our constitution, where the military themselves go to buy arms. They don't. You know, arms are bought for them. So for them to carry that amount of money, you cannot say that it was used to buy arms, or is it used to pay the soldiers on the field or what? So you see, this money has been there, it has floated around, and a lot of them are used to it, and they don't want to leave it alone. It happened in the Niger Delta.
Okay.
When the amnesty program came, a lot of soldiers refused to go, and in fact, I have situations. I was working in the oil industry at that time, where we had soldiers who are trying to even bribe their way to be posted back into the Niger Delta, because they feel that it's where they could make money, So the money motive has been there all the time. And I think we need to control this.
Let me come to you who's listening. You're my fourth guest. You're listening in your car. You're listening in your office. You're listening at home, and you desperately want to join the conversation. Call us right now. Our number is 01277 0993, 01277 1993, 2993, and 3993. I have to ask you what your thoughts are on this subject matter. Where do you stand with this whole situation? What are your thoughts on the Army's plan for Operation Positive Identification, OPI? I'll start calling OPI so it's easier for me to pronounce. What do you think about the Army's growing role in crime fighting? Hello to you. Welcome.
Sandra, good evening.
Good evening.
And good evening to all the guests that took part in this discussion. Very interesting indeed, and very eye-opening for me, Peter Omole from Somolu.
Okay.
My concern here is that one of the speakers has said that is an avenue that a lot of Nigerians are going to be killed. And I want to add there that it's also an avenue to some of the criminals among the army to extort money from Nigerians. Because you see a situation that is a waste of ID card, no ID card, you have to bail yourself with 50,000 or 200,000. That's one. And number two, if Mr. President has not called them and National Assembly has not called them, and then why should National Assembly invite the Chief of Army Staff to come and explain? Explain what? It means something that does not have bearing in the Constitution was not supposed to have been recognized by the National Assembly. And number three for me is that if Brodai should have gone 4 years ago, why is he still in service? Mr. President recommended him and National Assembly, they evaluated him. Can't the National Assembly use their power to ease out Brodai if Mr. President has refused to do that? Because they were part and parcel of bringing in Brodai. Can't they do it from the legislature to invalidate his professionalism or his qualification, yes, so to say, in the army as at now? Those are the issues I am raising because for me it's a distraction and it's diversionary. Brodai has stayed too long in Ukraine and different flies have come to meet him. I quote MKO Abiola. Thank you.
All right, Peter. Dr. Mole, I'm curious what you have to say to the points that Peter raised.
Well, I mean, yes, Brodai should have retired, but it is constitutional for the president does have the fiat to extend beyond the actual retirement age. So the issue here is not whether the president acted unlawfully in extending. Is the wisdom of it is what I question as to whether somebody that should have retired several years ago should still remain in service, especially under this circumstance. So yes, so it's not there. It's not as though he's operating unlawfully in that sense.
Okay, let's talk to Chibueze, who says he has a question for the guest. Chibueze, go ahead. You're live on the show, Chibueze. Go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, hello. Oh, yeah. Chibueze, unfortunately, you're calling a bad line, so you're going to have to call us back. Now, I asked Barrister Luce a question before the break. No, sorry, I asked Tenny Samakre a question before we started talking to guests to callers about a database, right? Do we have a database where the army can cross-check? Do we have a list? And he said he's not aware that we have such. And Dr. Omole, if such a database does not exist, and if the army doesn't have the training to differentiate between real and fake IDs, how is this operation meant to work?
Well, I mean, the operation was set up to fail in the first place, given what you just identified. The problem, part of the fundamental problem we have in Nigeria is failure of intelligence. We shouldn't really be checking everybody's ID card in this day and age if we have the appropriate intelligence in place. Part of the problem we have in this country, security-wise, is the many silos that exist. I mean, we have 21 ministries, departments, and agencies that relate to security in this country. And each of them have their own databases. And that's a problem. And these databases don't talk to one another. So that is a major problem, we have here, where take something as basic as the private security companies we see all over the place. They are licensed and managed by the Civil Defense Corps, not by the police. So the police actually don't have that database of all these security companies. It's Civil Defense that does. That's how fragmented things are in this country. So there is no overarching, database. Look at biometrics. Everybody's taking biometrics and creating their own database. Central bank will do their own. Telco companies will do their own. INEC will do.
Is there a way to centralize all of it?
Of course, there are ways to do this. It's an joined up operation. One of the things that talking about intelligence-led security, framework, is one of the things that came out after the 9/11 attack in the U.S. When they found out that all these terrorists existed in one security database or the other. CIA had some, but did not pass it on to FBI.
I see.
FBI had some, did not pass it on to CIA and all that. So that was what led to the creation of the Department of Homeland Security. And that sits on top of everything else. So everybody, so it's like mops up all the data that exists in all the silos. That becomes the mother that sits across everything. We don't have that in Nigeria. As a result, each person is doing their. I'm not sure that it got to the level of absurdity when few years ago. I'm not sure whether you can remember when there was a fight in the National Assembly between the police and the Federal Road Safety Corps over who was to issue the driver's license. It was that was the height of it, is because it overlaps both both agencies. So it wasn't clear who had the mandate.
So as long as we do not we do not take active steps to distinguish the roles of the different agencies,
Absolutely.
We're going to keep having these problems?
Absolutely.
We've got Ansela Minikorodu who says, truly the army is unnecessarily too loud. Why should they always preempt their operation to the public and by extension Boko Haram, their own enemy? Operation Positive Identification is ill-conceived. The police has remained too idle and docile. OPI ought to be their job. Ike is in Ikeja. Hello, Ike.
Good evening.
Good evening. Welcome.
Yeah.
Turn your radio down.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, I want to say that as far as
No, your radio is too loud, Ike.
As far as I can still remember.
Okay, no, this conversation can't continue because your radio is too loud. Barrister Luce, I have to ask you another legal question. If the National Assembly is summoning the army and claiming that it is performing an illegality, what legal recourse can the National Assembly take if they finally conclude that the law was broken?
Well, the most the National Assembly can do in this instance is to pass resolutions. But in sane climes where there is rule of law, where the rule of law is adhered to or is obeyed, a resolution from the National Assembly is taken seriously, and the authorities or the institutions against whom such resolutions are passed take caution and make amends. But then, unfortunately, with the way things are going on in Nigeria, resolutions from the National Assembly get ignored without any recourse. So I do not know what the National Assembly can do in this. They actually have no other legal means except to pass resolutions. The other means is what Falano and other lawyers are now doing by going to court to try to find legal judicial pronouncement on this issue. But then again, you have a government that has repeatedly rubbished court orders, gone away without any respect to court orders. So what I envisage is that this so-called Operation Positive Identification that the army is announcing will take place. Now the reality is this: whatever unsavory outcomes that follow from this operation cannot be deemed to be mistaken. Like I've said repeatedly here, there will be some deaths and there will be some injuries. Those deaths cannot be treated as manslaughter, as unintended, because it is clearly intended when you place soldiers with arms on the road to check for documents that they don't have the capacity to check, or even documents that are non-existent. There will be some resistance and there will be some bullets fired. So anybody who gets killed or maimed in this process was murdered by the authority of the chief of army staff. Simple. That is my own take on this matter.
All right.
Because clearly Nigerians are not behind it. It is illegal. It's unconstitutional. There's no due. It is senseless. So going further, any harm that occurs is willful, and anybody who is harmed can actually take up this matter. Even if Nigerian courts don't allow you, you can go to this national arena, and that's why the Nigerian government listens more.
Okay. Thank you so much, Barrister Ezeluche, for talking to us on the show today. And thank you as well, Dennis Amakri. Dennis Amakri is a security expert and former assistant director at the State Security Service. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Okay, on Facebook, Promise Adjuzia says, please, they shouldn't come to the South. We don't have identity problems like in the North. On Facebook as well, Omare Shule Eric says, I still wonder why soldiers are needed to be on our roads despite their already poor human rights records. There's no way this operation is needed down south or any other part or any part of the country because we do not have adequate database for every citizen. We have people watching us from Italy and from Ghana as well, and a lot of other comments coming in via Facebook. But this is where we wrap up the show today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much, Dr. Charles Omole, for joining us on Hard Facts today. We had to bring him in because you were all asking us to bring him in on the show. We had a fantastic show. Thanks for all your calls and all your messages, especially those who were sending messages congratulating me. I hope you enjoyed Hard Facts today as much as I enjoyed bringing these facts your way. The big hard fact, my amazing guests and I discussed OPI. Before that, Checkpoint talked about the gangs of Lagos. And on the big three at the top of the show, we looked at the border closure that is going to be closed over Christmas. SIP officials are stealing 68 million naira in school lunch money. And Anambra State has restricted the movement of petrol trucks to night time. As usual, we brought you the latest updates from the world of news, sports and entertainment, as well as business. Thank you so much to all the members of my team behind the scenes, as well as the station's fantastic news team. I'll be back tomorrow at 3:15, so join me. And in the meantime, let's talk online. Ezekwesili, that's my Twitter handle. You can also hear from Dr. Omole on Twitter, Dr. C. Omole. Until tomorrow, I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. Those were your hard facts, Lagos. Good night.